Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Max, and today I'm going to be doing my review for Loki Episode 2. Alright, so Episode 1 of Loki I really enjoyed. I think it was definitely the strongest pilot of any of the Disney Plus Marvel series we've gotten so far. And I think this episode really showed that, at least to me as of right now, this will be the strongest series because it seems like it does have a contained story within itself, but it's able to branch out more. And this really reminded me of what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did, where they had their own kind of stories that were interconnected, but then they were able to have, bigger things happen while still keeping it contained. And I think the whole thing with the TVA and the timeline, obviously, assuming this is the event that brings us into the multiverse, it will expand into the MCU more and not be its own thing. But as of right now, the story is very contained, and I think seeing how this works within the TVA and how it works for Loki will be very interesting. Now, we got a new character, or kind of a new character. We saw her a little bit in Episode 1, but she was cloaked, and we didn't exactly know who it was, even though there were a lot of guesses online as to who this would be, and we see that the Loki variant that they're hunting is likely Lady Loki. It hasn't been confirmed that this is her name or title, but it is very much evident that this will at least be some version of Lady Loki. I know it won't line up as of right now with the comics and how that worked because Loki possessed her soul or something in the comics, but I think this is definitely a version or at least some version of Loki that is female, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what this character does, because it seems like she wants to make sure Loki doesn't really ruin any of her plans, but she doesn't want to kind of cast him out. She left the door open for him to walk through to get away from the TVA and follow her, and which Loki did, of course. And I think it's really kind of interesting because I wonder, does she need his help? Does she want him to come with her? Is she, kind of doing the Loki thing, which is to manipulate people? So I think kind of seeing two different versions of Loki, and her seems to be a lot more aggressive, as we saw when she was, transferring herself between different bodies and fighting Loki. She was able to hold her own against him. So I think the idea that she can kind of use magic, or the Loki magic that we haven't really seen before, will be really cool to see in the show. Because as we've seen in the trailers, Loki uses some magic that we haven't really seen from him before. So I wonder if maybe, she kind of trains him, or whether it's something he discovers on his own, maybe through viewing her, and he's able to kind of use these powers that are either new or we've never seen before. Obviously, she is the greatest impact to the story aside from the character of Loki right now, because she bombed the sacred timeline, and I'm still not exactly sure whether the sacred timeline is a strand, because a lot of times when they show the cartoon, it looks like a strand of a bunch of different timelines, or universes rather. But regardless of what it is, she bombed it, and we saw at the end of the episode when all the TVA timekeepers were rushing to try and fix everything, that on the screens we saw numerous locations we've seen in Marvel movies before, such as, Ego's planet and different places around the world. And there were so many different timelines being created, and it looked like they were going into the red, which is when it kind of is too much for the TVA to reset. So I wonder if this is the event that leads into Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness, and we'll see in Spider-Man No Way Home. But I think if we get it this early in the show, it'll be really, interesting to see what this kind of goes into for the final 4 episodes of Loki, because we're only on episode 2 right now. So if this is something that's going to play into the MCU more moving forward, are they going to maybe deal with some elements of the multiverse? Maybe Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool comes over or something in Loki, and we kind of get these little pieces here and there, and then when it comes to the films, they will, kind of do the general explanation that Marvel does in all their films for, past films. And then they'll jump into the, the bigger cameos, the bigger storylines and things like that. Something else I really liked about this episode was the power dynamic within the TVA. We saw when Mobius was talking to his superior, while he is superior to Loki, he is not a character that's necessarily high up in the TVA. We saw with some of the timekeepers, he had to, do what they said, even though he was watching Loki. It was their mission, so he had to follow what they were saying. And then when he was talking to his superior, whose name I'm not remembering at this moment, about using Loki in the field and things like that, she basically gave him one more chance and then said, if this goes wrong, then there's not much I can do when it comes to what the timekeepers do about all this. So I think the levels within the TVA is really interesting, because we now know that Mobius is vulnerable as a character in his position, and he doesn't have a lot of say as to what goes on at the TVA. And then, the whole question of the timekeepers is one that comes up too. Some people have theorized that the TVA is kind of the villain of the story, and that they will be destroyed by the end of the show. Maybe King the Conqueror comes in, or who knows, but it seems like the timekeepers are really the focus of not only Loki, because it's his new obsession, but Lady Loki. Even though she said she doesn't want to necessarily overthrow them, it seems like she has an interest or a vendetta against them, and they really govern everything going on at the TVA. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where those stories go and how they interconnect with one another. I think in the next episode, we're going to get that scene where it looks like the planet was being destroyed, and Lady Loki and Loki were sitting on a rock talking to each other in that kind of purple, spacey atmosphere. And I think, we may get a lot of backstory with her and, her variants, or how long she's been doing this. And then I think we'll learn more about Loki's intentions for the show moving forward, because I really do think the multiverse is going to come into play now, at least in some regard. And it will be interesting to see how the show goes about doing this when we have some big movies coming up that will involve the multiverse. So that's about all I have for now. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you like it, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.